Hello, I am Professor Victor Ponce, and this is CIVE 634, Surface Water Hydrology. Let me put the material up and we'll get going here. Okay, my understanding is that you're seeing my website.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay,
Correct.
I still have 5 of you. Okay, our course is entirely 100% web-based or online. 100% of the material is online. And of course, I'm going to be teaching for 75 minutes twice a week, as you know, from the schedule, from the regular schedule. So in order to access my website, you have to go to ponce.scsu.edu. You may want to write it down, particularly for Callum, that is the first time you do it. The others, I'm sure you're familiar with. And if not, you can just review what I just said. ponce.scsu.edu. Once you go to ponce.scsu.edu, that's my website on the San Diego State server. All you need to do is to go to green 610 over here. Can you see it? Green 610. Callum? Good. Okay, so we got the green 610. I'm teaching 2 classes this semester, 634 and 638. In your case, you're interested in 634. Although I do realize that most of you, I think 80% of you, are actually taking the 638. So once you go in there, it shows up with a password. It's only for you. The username is CIVE634, and the password is Monday. Monday with lowercase. I'm not going to type it because I already typed this, and we go in directly. Okay, remember, lowercase, CIVE634, no spaces, and for the password, Monday, lowercase, no spaces. As easy as it is. Okay, now we're on our page here for the course. So I'm gonna talk about the syllabus today. Mostly, actually, I'm going to talk about this page because I need to discuss this in detail with you. So let's get started here. This is the class board. That means if I wanted to get in touch with you, other than sending you an email directly, I could write it on this board. I could say, for instance, I'm sick today, I'm not going to teach. I could do it here. So it would be to your advantage to every day go in this page and check what the messages are. Now, if experience is any indication, there are not going to be that many messages. I'm typically not sick, although I was sick last week with a flu, but not this week. Okay, so that's the case. So, but this is the class board where I feel free to write any announcements that I want all of you to reach or to get from me, from the professor. Okay. Realizing that we are, in terms of prerequisites, we are against the odds because I think that most of you have not taken the prerequisite. There's a prerequisite for this class, and it is 445. But 445 is an elective in an undergraduate course. And many of you have chosen not to take it for whatever reason. Perhaps at that time you weren't much interested in water, then later on you developed an interest. For whatever it is, the fact of the matter is that, if I may say so, many of you may be unprepared to take this class. However, given that there's quite a number of you, I have made the conscious decision to allow you into this class. There's an issue of technicality, I guess it is, whether graduate classes should have any prerequisites, but that's another story. Let me just say that all of you are in this class. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so I'm missing really only one person at this point. Doesn't matter. So you're in the class. The question is, what is it going to take for you to make it? And I think the answer is, you got to work a little harder. And in order to facilitate your work in this class, I have posted in here, right below the class board, it says Hydrology Reference, Ponce VM Engineering Hydrology. So I recommend that all of you take a look at this book. It's a textbook that I wrote 30 years ago on the subject, but it's a beginning textbook. It's not an advanced textbook. So anything we say in this class will be over and above what you see in here. Can you see it? You can see it, right? Over and above
Yes,
what you see in here.
we can see it.
Yeah, I recommend that you go back in here as time permits and as need arises to review the material. So if there's anything that I'm talking to you in this class that it looks like really foreign, I've never heard this subject, then you can go back to, you can go back over here, right? That's the contents of this book. Okay? The contents and the 13 chapters of this book. So this book should be used by all of you that are not, that would like to have some reinforcement on what I am saying, because I am not going to be talking about ABC. I'm going to be talking about MBT, something further beyond the beginning subjects. Okay, so if you have any questions or have any problems at the time that the subjects or the topics pop up, you can talk to me about it on a personal basis and see, I may see what can I do to help. Maybe I can recommend some reading or something like that. But not all the material that we cover is difficult, but some of it is. I would say maybe 20–30% would be difficult. It would be difficult for all of you, as it was difficult for me when I started learning these subjects about 45 to 50 years ago. Okay, so that is understood that that's going to be the case. You're under notice that this could happen. Okay, the calendar. It's very clear in here, so I'm not going to read this for you. I'm going to have you read it later. The calendar, we have week 6. Today is week 1. We have week 6, week 8. And week 6 is topic project selection, or project topic selection. You're all mandated or required to write a paper on this subject, on the subject of hydrology. The topics will have to be chosen by you with my concurrence from a list that I suggest. I'm going to suggest a list of about 20 subjects. And you're 6 students, so there's ample room for choice in there. Okay? So the midterm exam on week 8, that's the middle of the semester. There's preliminary oral presentations on week 11. So on week 6, you determine the subject and you have 5 weeks to prepare something to say. It would be a PowerPoint presentation. It would be a preliminary, it would be like a 20–30% advance on what you're going to submit at the end of the semester. Final oral presentations, week 16–17, the way the school has set up the weeks, we had to split this. Wednesday, 22–12:07, 22–12:12. Now, some of you, no, not all of them, only Callum, right? Only Callum is maybe surprised by what we're doing in here. But I, meaning we, date all our projects like year, month, date, because that's the only one that grows. That's my defense. That's the only one that grows. And since I have a large website, I have to classify my stuff, and I usually are held by the date of the generation. And if I did it in any other way, it wouldn't work. Okay? So get used to, when you talk to me about dates, I'm always going to say on 22, today is 22/8/22. That's the number that relates to this date. And the 1730, with or without dots, is the time. Usually San Diego State doesn't like the dots, but I keep the dots for ease of relating to it. Okay, so we have the midterm, we have the preliminary oral, final oral presentations, project report due on the Monday. On the Monday at 17:30, Monday on the 12th of December. In the final exam, that's already been scheduled. Okay, once we do that, usually I take a couple of days to issue the grades, all the grades. Sometimes even longer, because I have to read and grade the reports. Okay, so maybe 16, 17, 18, 19, about that time, within the latitude that the school gives us. I think it's 10 days. 10 days after the final. I have 10 days after the final to submit the grades, but I usually do it in the second or third. Okay, the office hours, how to find me. The preferred way to reach Professor Ponce is via the course email, ponce634.j@gmail.com. What does J do there? That's the name I've given the email for this class. Okay, so you remember this because this is where you're going to send me an email, or you can respond to my emails, the same thing. But this should be something that you should remember, ponce634.j@gmail. I have in the past given, and I continue with this semester, 3 20-minute virtual meeting slots available for consultation after every class, which you can request up to 48 hours in anticipation, so that I can have 3 meetings, up to 3 meetings. I can have only one, usually the first one. Or I can have, if there's a lot of requests, I can have up to 3 meetings every day. So if you want to talk to me about any subject related to the class, set it up with me with an email, and I will pay attention to it. I will meet individually with any of you that wants to meet with me individually through Zoom. Grading policy. We have a homework set, 20%, assignment set, 20%, midterm, project, and final. Everything is 20%. So there's 5 grades that you're going to have at the end. And this is very important. It says a record of perfect attendance will earn a bonus of 1/3 letter grade. In other words, if you earn a B+ and you attended the class perfectly, virtually, and I recorded you as attending, and normally what happens is that if you're in class at the beginning, I would have already marked you down as attending, as I'm going to do right now. Sarah, Callum, Cassidy, Santos, and Reiner. Right. Is Julia Moore in there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, see, I can't see you. Let me see. Oh, be there, the little arrow. You see these things happen. Julia Moore is in there. Okay, so I got, this thing is ridiculous. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Julia Moore is number 5, and Reiner is number 6. So I got 6. So Logan Platt is not attending, right? And Zuniga Calderon not attending either. They are new students, and maybe they had a hard time realizing what was going on. We'll see. We'll see next time. We got 2 people that are absent. Okay. Remember that if you come in late after 5:30, at night, you're on your own. You would have to remind me to put you on the schedule, to put you on the attendance sheet, because I'm not gonna be looking at it to see if you came in late. No, that's not my job. So if you came in late, it is your job to make sure that you are marked on the attendance sheet. If you came in 5 minutes late, you may not be unless you tell me directly. Okay? So and you lose your chance to get a bonus. Okay. Attendance policy. This is a virtual class where virtual attendance is required. This is the only way you would have a chance to listen to me on the subject. And I already told you, I got 35, 50 years of experience on this subject. Written a book, a textbook on it. And like I said, I'm very experienced on this subject, and I think it would be to your advantage to take advantage of it while we're at it. Okay, now, more than 2 unexcused absences will have a negative effect. What does this mean? It means that it would be my decision, if you have more than 2 unexcused absences, to give you a grade that reflects the fact that you were not here, at least not on my record. Okay, so I encourage all of you to keep up your attendance, and if you have to, if you're sick, you have to tell me I was sick that time, I couldn't make it, and you will be excused because of health reasons. But if you just don't show up, I will assume that it was unexcused, and therefore it will mark your letter down. You're not in your letter. You're great. You're great now. Term project. The project will consist of individual work on a topic selected from a suggested list. We'll go over the list later. Mutually agreed. So you will choose and I will agree. The report should be of professional quality. Its length should not exceed 15 pages. Listen to this. It should not exceed 15 pages. In the past, some of you have sent 17 pages, 20 pages. That's against the rules. It should be 15 pages. The reason is obvious. I don't want to read a 50-page report. Okay? Including tables and figures. Text should be double-spaced. The required two oral presentations, preliminary and final, should use a professional presentation tool. PowerPoint or something else that you may choose, that you may prefer. And finally, cheating and plagiarism. All work is to be done individually. And this is more so important in a virtual mode of teaching. Instances of cheating will be dealt with as stated in the current catalog. The current catalog has a way. If I find, I'm not going to be picky about it, or if I find some clear evidence that like cheating on an exam or something like that, I will take the appropriate action following university policies. Are there any questions about what I said in the last 10-15 minutes? Okay, let's proceed then. I'm going to go over the whole thing so you can see what you're up against this semester. It's a lot of material. I am, by training and by avocation, emphasize both quality and quantity. I don't want to talk too much about it. Most people only look at quantity. I'm going to look at quantity and quantity. Our syllabus is huge, by the way. Let's take a look at it. This is our syllabus. This is the first part of our syllabus before the week. So we have in here water balance, a week and a half, evapotranspiration, infiltration, week number 4, overland flow, week number 5, hydroclimatology and drought, week 6 and 7, and all these references. These are either papers that I wrote or stuff that I posted from the web or videos or just information. It's information that related to the subject matter. And for instance, here in green we have the water balance. This is all water balance topics. How many are they? There's 13. I'm sorry, I made a mistake in there. Usually there's mistakes like that. I just changed this morning. It says 11, 12, 13, 14, and 13. No, it's 15. I'm going to change that afterwards. Okay, so 15. On the second one we have 11. On the third one we have 6, 11, and 22. Then on week 8 we have the midterm exam, which has already been posted. When is that going to happen? Okay, the syllabus number 2, same thing. Same thing. We'll get to it eventually. This is the syllabus number 2. We go with base flow augmentation. So we're talking base flow here, and how do you calculate base flow, or how do you relate to the subject of base flow, which is a very uncommon subject in hydrology, by the way. For 99 papers on floods, there's 1 paper on base flow. That's about the ratio, and we have studied this in the past. Catchment routing. Yes, catchment routing is one of my fortes, so we emphasize that clearly in this class. Catchment routing. Catchment routing. Hold on a minute. Yeah, there's a little bug in here. I'll fix it later. One of them is catchment modeling, I think, and the other one is catchment routing. Okay, we'll fix that later. As you see, this is so huge that there's bugs in there, even though I try not to have bugs. Finally, we have a week on climate change. Why? Because we believe climate change is important, and we should put all of you on the same page as far as what climate change is and how is it affecting us. What do you mean by us? What I mean by us is because climate change is affecting hydrology, and we're studying hydrology, so we need to know about climate change. So that's basically it as far as the second part of the syllabus. Homework instructions, here it is, spelled out completely. Every homework to be submitted as one PDF file. I do not want any Word files. They all should be PDF files, okay? I know all of you work with both PDF and Word. My preference and my requirement is with PDF. The name of the file must follow this format. So all the homework that you submit should say CIVE 634 in your last name, in your homework or the assignment. Homework or assignment. Very clearly. And don't make a mistake, because if you make a mistake in here, then I don't know who did the work, or I don't know what homework did you do. Because you have to be very careful when you do this. Okay? Instructions should be strictly followed. I don't want different people sending me different ways in which you type the homework, because that would only complicate my life. Okay, I want all of you to follow the same pattern so that I can put you, all of you, in one list and follow accordingly with the grading, and don't have any confusions. Because since we are virtual here, there's possibilities for confusion, not only on your side, but also on my side. The PDF should be clearly readable when printed under normal conditions. This is a requirement. I often have, not often, but every once in a while I had maybe out of 6 students, maybe 1 or 2 that submit work that is unreadable. I can't read it. So either I have to increase the size or do something about it, and that puts pressure on my time, and I don't like that. So clearly readable. Make sure that it's clearly readable. Files that cannot be read readily will be returned without grading. Material should be neatly presented in sequential order and easy to follow, with answers enclosed within a box at the end. Failure to comply with this instruction will result in a grade penalty. Okay, so that's basically the homework instructions. Please follow your homework instructions. The homework. I have posted now all the homework. You are not required to do the homework, obviously, together, because I'm prepared to do that. You'll have to get some classroom instruction before you do the homework. But all the homework is in here already. Today I'm assigning homework number 1, which is this. Okay? And it's and it'll be due on the 29th. Hopefully today we're going to cover that subject if we have time. I think we have to speed up in here. Homework 2, homework 3, all homework is to be sent to Ponce Gmail by 22 hours on the due date. So at 10 o'clock on the due date, I'm supposed to receive all your homework. Typically, I start getting the homework at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10. I do not want to, and I will not grade homework that is past due as far as the time is concerned. Assignments. These are all the assignments. There's 12 assignments. These are short assignments, not long. They're like typically 1 page or less. They're either calculations or essays or something else, or proofs. I have a proof in here. Proof equation 14 is in item F8 of the syllabus. Okay? You have to look at what's item F8 and so forth. But we'll cover these as we make progress here. Assign 8/22. Today's 8/22. At 8/20, that means this homework is due in a week, like that other one. It's not homework. This is an assignment. It's due in a week. And I'm going to endeavor to move the green and the red progressively so you know which one is active. Okay? If I forget to do that and you notice that there's a bug in there, please let me know. But I don't think so. It's my job. I'll be paying attention to it. I should be moving the green and the red further down as time proceeds. So this is the homework. So you should be looking at homework 1 at this point. Videos. These videos complement what I say in class. I won't be able to query you on all the material in the videos, although the material in the videos reproduces and repeats in video form what I have said in class. So it is to your advantage to watch these videos in your time. Excuse me, in your free time. Lots of videos. Every week, at least a couple of videos. At least a couple of videos. For instance, we have the CN oral interview. This is an hour-and-a-half video, which is the oral interview, the oral history interview that was, I did an interview on June 22nd of last year on the CN history. The CN is the curve number history. Okay, so that's the recommended videos. Hold on a minute here. In projects, okay. So what I'm going to, I don't have the time right now, but I want you to go over this page preliminarily on a preliminary basis And take a look at the subjects, and I know many of you are going to say, what the heck is this? I've never heard of this. Well, that's what you're here to learn, okay? So see if you can get some idea and talk to me about it. We have 4 weeks, I believe 4 or 5 weeks, to choose a topic. And you're going to have to choose one of these topics. There's 6 students in this class, and there's 24 topics. So there's ample space for choice in here. So I would not take any other subject other than the ones listed in here. Okay, so, and this is all relating to the subjects that we're going to be covering. So it is to your advantage to examine from now on. If you want to choose a hard topic, let me know. I can tell you which topics would be hard. And conversely, if you want an easy subject, I can also recommend, in my opinion, what would be an easier subject among the lists that are in here. I did not set out to do a hard subject and an easy subject, but it so happens that some of the subjects are easier or harder than others. Okay? So that's up to you. Talk to me in the next, you have 4 weeks or 5 weeks actually to choose. And then at the end, you have up to, but you can choose tomorrow. If you want to, you can choose tomorrow. Once you choose tomorrow, though, for instance, you say, Professor Ponce, number 3 is my choice, and you do that tomorrow. I will write your name in here, TBA, to be announced. I will write in there Jones, whatever, or Thornberry, to use one of your names. Thornberry, and then nobody else can take that because Thornberry already took it, okay? So it's just our advantage to go early on the choice of the subjects. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the syllabus. We have 45 minutes. We're good. We're good. Okay, any questions so far? Let me see. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have everybody here. No. There's 2 people that are missing. There's 8 students. Okay, fine. Okay, so we go on the subject. We're going to study surface water hydrology. I already told you there's a class called 445, which is called Applied Hydrology, that we teach at undergraduate level. It's an elective. That's why most people, not most, but a lot of people, like some of you, did not take that class. And then now you decided that you're going to go water, and you need to take some classes in water, and our surface water class was there, so you're here. Okay? Okay, so many years ago, in the year 1993, by the way, Professor Ponce likes history, so every once in a while I relate back to history. In the year 1993, I took a consulting job in India, with my colleague was A.B. Palaniappan from India, and we were sitting on the porch of the guest house, I guess it was a guest house, at night, and I told A.B. that I had made a list of types of hydrology, and that I had come up with 12, and I did a lecture, by the way. I did a lecture on that at some other venue. And he said, Ponce, certainly there's more than 12. So he challenged me, and at that time, there were 2 of us experienced in hydrology and hydraulics, and we did a list. We came up with a list of 55 types of hydrology. Since 1993, it's been 29 years. In the meantime, A.B. Palaniappan unfortunately died. He died in a train accident, which apparently they're quite common in India. I don't want to say that in any way, in any colorful way, but he died. My colleague, A.B. Palaniappan, great guy, maybe 10, 15 years after we had met. But the list remains, and since then we have increased that list one or two items every year, and right now we have 108 types of hydrology. Why do I do this at the beginning? To show you that the subject that we're dealing with is extremely wide and complex and varied. I consider myself an expert in water, namely hydraulics and hydrology. And by the way, we'll get there later, the difference between one versus the other. And yet, if you take me to task, I could say that I really know 10 of these subjects. 10. The other 95 I don't know. And I would venture even to guess in any of them. So as you can see, this is broad. It's a very broad subject, a very important subject. It has to deal with the quantity of water. What's the difference between hydrolysis and hydrology? Let's cover it right now. Hydrology deals with the quantity of water, and hydraulic deals with the water, how it affects the stability of structures. Meaning hydraulics is more civil. Hydrology, there's all kinds of hydrologists, by the way. There's geologists that are hydrologists, geographers that are hydrologists, and civil engineers. Those three professions take it up on hydrology. We have a tendency to be more numerically minded in terms of running the models and understanding the physics and the mathematics, the calculus, etc. Because why not say so? The geographers don't learn too much math. That's why they're out there in the College of Arts and Letters. Okay, so they can't really get deep into the math as we can, because we have taken 4 calculus classes in our undergraduate study. So we can handle more of the math. Now, handling more of the math doesn't mean that we may be correct or better or correct, because one thing is to do the calculation, and another thing is to understand how the calculation affects the problem, or even if the calculation is the correct calculation to make. So I'm not going to get into that at this point, because that's beyond the subject at this point. But what I'm saying is that we have in here 108 types of hydrology. And when you become an expert 20 years down the road, you probably would know maybe 10 or 20 at the most. General classification: surface water, groundwater, vadose zone. Interesting. Surface water, groundwater. So we are not going to cover groundwater. Technically, no, but in reality, yes. We're going to be talking about base flow, and base flow comes from the groundwater. We cannot separate. There's only one hydrology. We have separated it in 108 because for ease of learning, and besides, science operates that way by specialization. I can't tell somebody, hey, you're going to learn hydrology, see you later, and hope that they're going to learn all these 108 subjects. That is impossible. They cannot. You can't fit into your mind all the knowledge that there is in this subject, or in hydrology. The second subject is geomorphic regions, very important. I urge you to review the names of these, if only to prepare for the first assignment. The first assignment is to choose one of these names and write an essay on it. That's easy assignment, by the way, because you're going to go out there to Google, and you're going to learn very quickly at least what Google says about it. And Google, in my opinion, Google is correct in 98% of the cases, a number ascribed by me based on experience. Sometimes there's mistakes, but they're so small that people really don't look at the mistakes. There's two kinds of people out there: those that believe in Wikipedia and Google and go by it, and there's those that don't. But the ones that go by Wikipedia and Google are the large majority of the people out there. It's a different kind of science that is evolving due to the facility to get data from the web. So we have geomorphic regions, temporal scale. This is very important for engineering: flood, drought, yield. Those are 3 different things: flood, drought, and yield. And I'm not going to define all of them for you. I'm just showing you what's out there. Methodologies, all kinds of methodologies. Climatic regions, yes. Topical, there's a list of topical. Mining hydrology, navigational hydrology, military, how about that? I believe all of these names have been posted in Wikipedia or Google. So you take any of these and Google it, and you'll see, depending on the ease or depending on the age of this name, it could be 100 or 1,000 or 100,000. If you put drought hydrology in there, you'll probably get 5 million. I urge you to do it later, or more than 5 million, because drought is a very common problem. Or flood hydrology, flood and drought hydrology. If you go to parametric hydrology, it may not be that large. As a matter of fact, many years ago, I developed a subject called, I don't know if it's here. Yeah, right, 95. 95, can you see 95 in here? Joaquin, what does it say?
Eco-hydroclimatology.
Eco-hydroclimatology, correct. In the year 2013, I developed a proposal to do a study on this, eco-hydroclimatology. It's a combination of eco-hydrology, which was already around, and hydroclimatology, which had been around for maybe 30 years. So 30 years of hydroclimatology and maybe 10 years of eco-hydrology allowed me to, in the year 2013, to come up with a subject that was eco-hydroclimatology. So the first thing I did was to go to Google and see if that thing existed. Because if it didn't exist, I was going to create it. Sure enough, there was one gentleman, professor out of India, who was teaching at an Indian university this subject. He called it eco-hydroclimatology, which, as the name implies, is a combination of eco-hydrology and hydroclimatology, meaning the hydrology of the plants related to the plants and the hydrology related to the climate. Plants and climate, they're kind of very much together. So that's eco-hydroclimatology. There was one, so I said, well, this area is a virgin area. So I proceeded to develop my proposal. I got the resources, the money, and we did a study on eco-hydroclimatology. We wrote later, subsequently, we wrote a paper, which is about 80-page paper on eco-hydroclimatology, which I'm not sure we read in this class because it's part of some other class that I have taught last year. But the point is that if you, at this point, 10 years later, go and Google eco-hydroclimatology, as I have done, the last time I did it, it was about 800. So in 10 years, it grew from 1 to 800. My work, of course, listed among the beginning papers or references that I posted in, in Wikipedia or Google. Okay, so this is all what I'm going to say. So my advice to you is go over this list, choose something that really interests you, or something that you want to learn, and go for it and do a little presentation, not a presentation, a little essay. It's an essay on what that means. My objective is to get you informed and going on the variety of subjects that that hydrology means. In this course, we are going to stress the surface water. 90% of the what I say in this class is going to be on surface water. We are going to stress mechanistic and conceptual. In other words, physical and conceptual. We're not going to stress stochastic. Why? Because I'm not a stochastic person. You can go to other faculty at San Diego State and you can learn stochastic concepts, not from me, okay? But hydrology has 4 areas. It has physical, conceptual, stochastic, and experimental or empirical. So we cover the first 2, stochastic we don't cover. So that's what we're going to do. So many of the subjects that you're going to see in the syllabus relate to either physical, mechanical or physical, or also conceptual. Conceptual is when we give up on the physics and we go for something that's relatively easy, and that's the only way that could handle the complexity of nature. Because sometimes the nature is so complex, varied in space and time, that we cannot handle it in a model. And that's why we come up with the conceptual models. Okay, suffice it to say at this point that that is the facets of hydrology. Now, factors affecting precipitation. We're going to be looking precipitation. Basically, hydrology starts with the clouds. I guess it starts beyond the clouds. But we kind of, for simplicity, reference it to the clouds. In other words, we are going to be beginning with the clouds. So it is important that we realize at this point the factors that affect precipitation, because we are going to be asked all the time as hydrologists to calculate precipitation. It doesn't stop there. We could also be asked to figure out what goes on with precipitation after it hits the ground. But typically after it hits the ground, Also, it is also surface water hydrology, by the way. But the further down you go downstream, it starts becoming hydraulics. And we're not here to cover hydraulics. I covered hydraulics last year, and you can cover, all of you took a course in hydraulics already. I do not believe that you have taken open channel hydraulics. I do not require open channel hydraulics for this class, but I recommend it highly. So if you have not taken open channel hydraulics, I recommend that you take it concurrently. However, I've been told by one of you, I think, that you can't do that because the class is full. At a pinch, I could, if you wanted to, if you still have room in the schedule, I can talk to the instructor to perhaps do an exception for you if you really are intent on taking, excuse me, excuse me, and taking open channel hydraulics concurrently with this class. Okay, so I'm a little bit confused in here. Open channel hydraulics is for the other class, but it's okay. You can still benefit from open channel hydraulics with this class. Okay, let's go on to factors affecting precipitation. The amount of precipitation, it varies all over the world. There's places around the world where it rains a whole lot and places where it doesn't rain at all. We know that for a fact. So why is it? Can it be changed? Does it change all the time? I know we know that it changes. The precipitation is not constant by all means. But we need to learn the mechanics and the physics behind the factors affecting precipitation. I have in here a list of 9 factors that we should present to you. I should present to you so that you know later what we are talking about. First of all, in order to precipitate, you have to have moisture. You have to have moisture availability. The moisture in the air has to condense, and it has to coalesce. So missing any of these 3, it doesn't happen. So if there's moisture and it condenses, but it does not coalesce, precipitation doesn't happen. There's clouds in there and that's it. If you have moisture but it does not condense or coalesce, or condense but not coalesce, or coalesce but not condense, the thing is that you have to have all 3 for precipitation to happen. So these 9 factors are not in any particular order other than global order, I think. I put these in terms of global order. So latitude is the first and most important. The climate. The climate is either tropical, temperate, or polar, a function of the Hadley and Ferrel cells. What are the Hadley and Ferrel cells? I was looking at it this morning, and I decided to come up with this, help you out with this, or help us out. Here it is, if you haven't heard of this. The Hadley cell is an atmospheric circulation cell in the tropics. Right there, here's a Hadley cell. The Ferrel cell is this one. And I don't know why these people here call it mid-latitude cell. It is a Ferrel cell. It says in there, Hadley cell, Ferrel cells. It says Ferrel cells, mid-latitude cells, okay? So the mid-latitude cell is the Ferrel cell. The way this thing works is that because of the circulation is this way in here, and this way in here, can you see that? The rotation is in this direction and in this direction. No, over here it comes down, and here it goes down. Confusion in here as to what exactly is going on. But the point is that when the air goes up, it'll cool and it will rain. And if it goes down, it will not cool, it will warm up, and it will not rain. Okay, so we have in here a situation where due to the Hadley and Ferrel cells, it rains in the tropics and it rains at 60 degrees. The latitude of England, roughly. Okay? And it doesn't rain at 30 degrees. Now, let me ask you, what is the latitude of San Diego? Anybody volunteer an answer to that? Axel? Joaquin? Callum? The correct answer to that question is 32. How far is 32 above 30? Not too far. Does it rain in San Diego? Not quite. It rains only at Lindbergh Field, 10 inches. Ramona, 15 inches. Laguna, 20 inches. Laguna up here, East County. Salton Sea, 2 inches. Oh, how about that? Let me repeat. Lindbergh, 10 inches. 10 inches, not a whole lot. Ramona, 15 inches. Laguna Mountain, 20 inches. That's the most in the county. And then it comes down very quickly because of the orographic effect to 2 inches in the Salton Sea. What is the average of precipitation, global terrestrial precipitation around the world? This is a number that those of you that took environmental hydrology must know by now. Julia, do you know that number? Don't remember.
Can you say the question again?
What is the average global terrestrial precipitation? I just said that in San Diego varies between 10, 15, 20, and 2. San Diego County. What is the world average of global terrestrial? Joaquin?
I'm going to guess 10.
No, absolutely not. 30, 31. That's the global terrestrial precipitation. So in other words, around the world, any place that rains more than 31 it's getting more of its share. And less than 31 is getting less of its share. San Diego is getting 10 or to 15. Well, say 10, San Diego, city of San Diego. So we're getting 1/3 of our share, what we should be getting if rain would be spatially uniform, which obviously it's not because it varies with all these factors that I already told you. Okay, let me speed up in here, otherwise we're not gonna finish. Okay, so now we know the Hadley and Ferrell cells. Global and mesoscale currents, as it says in there, the ENSO currents. The ENSO stands for El Nino Southern Oscillation. We already covered El Nino in the previous class too. El Nino is an oscillation that happens in the Pacific, Southern Hemisphere Pacific, which causes anomalies throughout the Pacific, all the way from California, Peru, and Japan. A very important atmospheric effect, El Nino. You have heard of it before. It's in the media. Atmospheric currents, such as the monsoon-related precip. Bay of Bengal has a monsoon-related precip. Proximity to moisture source, that is very important. Since the moisture source creates the moisture, the areas that are that are closer to a moisture source are likely to be wetter. Number 5, relative continental position. Relative continental location with respect to one or more moisture sources. For example, Arizona, convergence of Pacific and Gulf moisture, lifting through convergence, etc. So relative continental position is also important. And that's something we cannot change. We cannot say, oh, I don't like the way San Diego is positioned, let's move to the Pacific Northwest. We cannot do that. Season, obviously, I don't have to say anything about that. Everybody knows that. Season, but the rainy season varies. And that's interesting because it provides a little bit of a monkey wrench in the situation. Winter and summer, it's irrelevant. In some places it rains more in the winter, in other places more in the summer. So the season relates to the actual location, continental location. Presence of orographic barriers. I just talked about it. I said that in Laguna Mountains it rains 20 inches, and in the Salton Sea, on the other side of the mountains, it rains only 2 inches. Why? Because the moisture that is going from the Pacific, it actually gets wrung out of the air by the mountains, which are not that high, but they get the water out. And very few of it, very small portion of it, or small amount, gets to the gets beyond the mountains. Land surface condition, very important. We already talked about that in environmental class. The texture, the color, and the moisture content of the land determines the surface albedo, which conditions the near surface radiation balance and makes possible thermal lifting. In other words, The darker the ground, the more it'll rain. That's a fact. So like for instance, in the Amazon rainforest, even though it's green, from the top it looks dark because it's dark green, and therefore it rains a whole lot in the Amazon rainforest. Precipitation in the Amazon rainforest is considered to be between 2,200 to 3,200 millimeters, which is between 80 to 100 inches. And I already told you a minute ago, the 31 inches was the average. So in the Amazon, it rains like 2.5 to 3 times more than the average, the world average. In the natural and anthropogenic atmospheric particulates, that has to do with volcano eruptions or fires. The fires could be either natural, as we have had in California the last few years, extensive fires, or they could also be human-induced. Okay, increase the load atmospheric particulates. Increase the load atmospheric, this is a mistake. Increase the load of atmospheric particulates, favoring the downwind formation of precipitation. And in here, I am going to show you something that I put together today, the Yellowstone fire. The Yellowstone fire burned up, 1988 Yellowstone fire. It burned a whole lot of park out there. And it was out of control after 3 weeks, and there were 9,500, as I understand that, there were 9,500 firemen fighting the fire. And they could not, 9,500, 9,500, and they could not control it. But after 3 weeks, enough particulates were put into the air that it started to rain, and it rained technically cats and dogs. It rained like an inch in 2 hours or 3 hours, and basically the fire was out. So nature knows how to do it. She kind of has a cybernetic way of self-control. We tried to help, but we couldn't do anything. With all our might in terms of fighting fires, you know that. You've seen it in the media. We couldn't do anything with a fire that's out of control. But we must have known, or we could have known, or we should have known, that eventually this thing was going to control by itself, or self-control. And that's an example of what we're talking about here, about the number 9 in here, anthropogenic atmospheric particulates. Okay, the water balance figures. These water balance figures, I'm not going to have time to completely finish this, but I'm going to have you do work on your own after all. All of you are graduate students. Here we have a graph of what we're going to be talking about here about the water balance. The precipitation incoming, evapotranspiration from surfaces and water bodies and surfaces, transpiration from plants. Q is the runoff, and G is the underground runoff. That's the total water balance when you consider the whole thing, surface water and groundwater. But if you consider only for floods, we only consider this, the partition in two, and we only consider the top part. And we call this infiltration. And this gives us an easier way of handling the situation, particularly for floods, but it does not give us the long-term view of it. In other words, the infiltration is considered separately from ET, when in fact, whatever infiltrates, it could come out as ET also. So there's a double counting in here, which for purposes of simplicity, we oftentimes overlook or choose not to look into. But this balance here is the better balance, the more complete balance. This is, we call this a beginning balance, or a balance that is an incomplete water balance. Now, here we introduce a gentleman by the name of Leibovich. Leibovich is a Russian hydrologist, which in 1979 wrote a book on the subject of how to do a water balance. And we recognize now that he came up with a complete water balance. And he did so by relying on this figure, which is of his creation. We kind of beautified it, but it is basically his. He developed the idea of wetting, which is not considered in the conventional water balance. So in the Leibovich water balance, the wetting concept plays a very important role in here. Very important role. As you can see, precipitation goes on the surface or it goes into wetting. Wetting goes underground or it goes into vaporization. Vaporization goes into E, which is from the surface, and T from the plants. E from the surface is from the ground and from the water. Runoff is total S plus U, and P is R plus V. So it's a complete set, cogent, completely coherent set of water balance equations. So now we have in here, from the Leibovitz water balance, we would go the water balance using catchment wetting. And with this is where we are, this is where I'm going to stop in here, not right now, in 15 minutes, so as to allow you to proceed with your homework. And by the way, there's two ways to do this homework: with Excel or with our calculator. We have a lab. Our visual lab is going on its 24th year. We created that in 1993. No, I'm sorry, 1999. So this is the 24th year of our laboratory. And one of the functions of our laboratory is to create analytical computational tools, online tools. And that's what we have done in here. We have this calculator over here, which is an online calculator. Okay, if you don't like that, you could always use your Excel, but your Excel is gonna cost you maybe at least 3 hours of your time, while the calculator is gonna cost you 15-20 minutes. So I encourage you to use the calculator. It will show where it is, etc., so that it can be done. Now you can also do one thing that some people still do. I don't know why. They do the calculator and then they use the Excel sheet to verify it. Why is that? In reality, it's because people are very comfortable with Excel sheet. We've been doing Excel sheets for about 30 years now. I believe Excel was introduced in the year 1991. So Excel is probably older than many of you or some of you. It's there, and it's still being used by, I would say, 98 to 99% of the engineers. You must know Excel if you want to be hired out there. That doesn't mean that it is the only or the fastest. Typically, it's not the fastest, nor it is the only. So that's why we have provided, perhaps with a view of the future, the calculators. Okay, so let's talk. I'm going to talk about how to do this calculation and go back to Leibovitz. Okay, and I now present that paper that I have written. It's a write-down paper of the subject of Leibovitz. Okay, in order to publish it and make it more understandable, publish online and make it more understandable. I should tell you at this point that there's two kinds of papers out there in the literature: those that can be read readily and those that cannot. And those that can be read readily usually don't get published in journals. Unfortunately, that's the truth. So what I try to do here is to make it simple for many of you that are learning a subject to read a paper that is readable, because all the technicalities have been taken out of it. And I hope that this is the case with this paper. The concept of catchment wetting, due to Leibovitz, enables an improved water balance, that which is possible using conventional methods. I published this paper in 1995. Very complex paper. I was told at the time that maybe this procedure will solve the many problems that we had encountered when doing the conventional method. And that is correct, because this procedure does not have any double counting. Okay? The way this starts is like this. Given a set of paired precipitation and stream flow, and we need to use an appropriate base flow separation technique. For those of you that are not familiar with this base flow separation, I urge you to go to my chapter 2, base flow, of my book. Leibovitz method enables the calculation of the matrix of precipitation, runoff, wetting, vaporization, etc. This provides an improved understanding of all the components for a given catchment. So what is the water balance? The water balance is the process by which precipitation is separated into its various components. We already shown the various components. For the entire system, we have evaporation, evapotranspiration, direct surface runoff, groundwater flow, which leads to this formula, formula 1, which represents the figure 1. Equation, there's a caveat in here. This equation does not include deep percolation. What does that mean? Does it mean that all the water that infiltrates into the ground is going to show up within the control volume? And the answer is maybe, but most likely no. Okay, people have done this study and they have determined that there is a subject here which we don't put on this graph, which is called deep percolation, which is the amount of groundwater flow which does not appear as base flow. When we consider that to be less than 1.5, typically 2% of precipitation, and since we have this is not 100% accurate calculation, we neglect it on practical grounds because we cannot really calculate deep percolation in every place. You wanted to, but you couldn't. As a matter of fact, I urge you to go out there and find out how many calculations of deep percolation on a groundwater view are there, and they're not that many. Maybe 5, maybe 10. You can imagine the entire world. Very few people are actually doing this calculation of deep percolation because it is almost impossible to do. But we can calculate the rest, though, the G, the Q, the P, the T, etc. So we neglect the deep percolation. Now, when we exclude groundwater, since the groundwater is slow, we're not interested as far as floods is concerned, since floods are fast. So we can exclude the groundwater from the flood situation. And then we get to this graph, which I have already shown you. It's an incomplete graph, but it's a graph that serves the purpose of calculating floods. And a lot of the business, if you could call it a business, a lot of the work that engineers do is with floods. I would say 90% of the work that we do is with floods. And I'm not too far incorrect in that figure, by the way. 80 to 90% is floods. Many of you that are working or will work with water are typically working with floods. That's the fact. Flood is something that society puts money into. Solve the problem with floods. We'll get to that later. Okay? And here we explain why is it that infiltration is difficult. Unknown fate of infiltration. It can return as evaporation. It can return as evapotranspiration. And it can reach the groundwater and eventually exfiltrate as base flow to join the surface flow. Okay? This double counting has defied accuracy in conventional water models. Okay? And the source of the problem is equation 2. This equation assumes that infiltration is a sink independent of ET and Q, when in fact it isn't. And that is where the problem with the conventional water balance is. So when you do a conventional water balance, there's always a problem in closing the problem completely. Okay, so now we move in here to event versus annual water balance. We have in here the event water balance is given in terms of Q plus losses, while the annual water balance is the whole thing. It's the runoff plus the vaporization. There are no losses in here. All the losses are included in the V. So these are two different. The number 3 is event, meaning short. Event could be a day, 2 days, 5 days, 10 days. While this one is 1 year, always 1 year. This is an annual basis. There's very unusual situation where the event becomes the annual. But as far as I know, I only know of one case, which is the Upper Paraguay Basin in Brazil, which I've studied in the late 70s, by the way. As I started my career, I was working in the Upper Paraguay in Brazil, and we learned about all this stuff. The Upper Paraguay has a unique watershed that has a unique response, and in that response, the event response is the same as the annual response, which is not the case anywhere else as far as I know. I haven't seen all the watersheds in the world, but the ones that I've seen, this is the only place. But typically, though, equation 3 is justified because it's quite different from equation 5 for all practical purposes. So then we go into Leibovich's water balance, which is equation 6, equation 7, we already covered this ground, equation 8, equation 9, equation 10, and it all given in here. Please examine these and make sure carefully, and make sure that you understand what this is all about graphically. And if you don't, then go back and reread it, okay? Because you need to understand all this stuff, all these equations. And finally, we come up with definitions of the base flow coefficient and the runoff coefficient. Now, the runoff coefficient is very popular, and everybody looks at it. It's the relationship between the runoff and the precipitation. So if you say the runoff coefficient is 20%, that means that 20% of the rain showed up at the end of the watershed, at the mouth of the watershed. 20% runoff. Now, this is a number that varies quite a bit. Quite a bit. I've seen numbers of 2%. I've also seen a high number of 93%. It could not be, well, let me say that, let's just stick to that. 2% is very, very low. 93% is very, very high. It's an exception. Actually, in the book by Leibovich, he mentions these two numbers, 2% very, very low and 93% very, very high. But typically, the runoff coefficient, which is average around the world, global average is 30 to 35%. In California, I believe it's 20%. So that means that California has water, but not a whole lot of water. In the Amazon, we have calculated the runoff coefficient for the Amazon Basin, which comprises 8 countries in South America. And the runoff coefficient in the Amazon is 51%. There's a lot of water out there running off, okay? That's one of the things that engineers are charged with doing. They give you a basin and they say, I want to find out the water, the amount of water, the runoff coefficient. There's tons of basins. There's myriad, thousands, millions of basins, not just in the United States. You can be hired to do work in any other part of the Americas or Asia, Africa, whatever. You go out there and you got to research the whole thing, work with the local people in order to determine the data. That's what engineers do. That's what hydrologists do. Many times we can do that even remotely. Nowadays, with all the technology that we have, you don't actually have to go out there to look at it. However, I do recommend every instance of my projects that I have had, and I've had quite a few, I wouldn't say a whole lot, but quite a few projects. I also have to teach, you know. I've always managed to require that I be taken to the field. It is very important that you smell, that you watch, that you see the field. So don't rely yourself on just on virtual, meaning you didn't go to the field, you looked at the photographs and so forth. That's good. That's good and it helps, but it does not help completely, because you still have to go out there and feel the local situation. I have done that in the past in all my career, and I recommend that you do that. So the runoff coefficient is very common. The base flow coefficient is not common, also defined by Leibovich in order to study base flow. Base flow has now become very important, by the way. I have 3 minutes, I'm going to finish it here. Base flow has become very important. Why? Because we have belatedly recognized that the water in the groundwater is coming through base flow. And I say belatedly because it's only been in the literature for the last 20 years. Hydrology is at least 100 years, if not more. So if we pump the groundwater, we may be affecting base flow. There was a paper in the year 2004, a report written out of Maryland that came out and said that outright. It says, we are pumping the groundwater and they're affecting base flow, and this is the proof, the numbers, okay? And that was the year 2004, mind you, only 18 years ago. So up to that time, people were fuzzy or unfamiliar with the actual situation. So since then and now, base flow has become very important, and so much the better that we are actually calculating it in here. So the methodology is the methodology, and here if you don't have time, you can follow it through, and there's an example, very easy to follow with the calculator. That's my calculator, and you will be able to use this, the calculator is right there. There's the calculator. It will be a simple matter for you to learn how to use this calculator and try it out. As a matter of fact, try it out with this example. Put in there the PRS. Can you see the PRS in there? If you see the PRS in there, the P precipitation, R runoff, and S surface runoff. Total runoff and surface runoff. And then when you come in here, you put in here P, R, and S, and the number of values in metric or US customary, it doesn't matter because it comes out total, and then you get the output, okay? And then you get the output. So I want you to run it as an example so you can try it out, and then you run it with your problem. If you know what you're doing and you study the situation, it takes you 15 to 30 minutes to finish this problem completely. Should I say it? Without using Excel. But if you want to, you go ahead. I can't stop you from doing that. Okay, so the methodology here then is, I got 3 minutes here. Column 1 contains the sequential numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 years of data. Column 2, precipitation record. Column 3, the runoff record, obtained from stream gauging data. So you got to have stream gauging data in here. And that's not common, by the way. For 100 gauges, for 100 rain gauges, there's only 10 stream gauges, roughly, all over the world. So they're not that many stream gauging data as opposed to rain gauging. Yet, in order to do this calculation, we need stream gauging. Okay? Columns 4 and 5 are obtained from the runoff record by using hydrograph separation techniques. If you don't know about hydrograph separation techniques, that's in chapter 2 of my book, clearly stated. Then column 6 is wetting, as defined by here. W is P minus S. V is W minus U. Case of U is U over W. In case of R is R over P. And therefore, that's the end. And then the average is this. So the result of this calculation would be that the base flow coefficient for the data given for this basin is 10.7%, and the runoff coefficient 21.2% based on the given data. And we have a summary here. So let me go over the summary. The set of water balance equations developed by Leibovich are used to formulate a step-by-step procedure to calculate annual water balance components. Mind you, what we have shown in here to you is not PowerPoint. In the past, my students have jokingly or whatever called it PowerPonce. And it is PowerPonce because very few people can have the wherewithal to have everything on the web as we do it. Okay, we have everything on the web, so we can do it directly on the web. We really, honestly, don't need PowerPoint. And that's the way we're going to do it. I'm going to show you everything I'm going to show you is directly on the web. I can increase the size if needed. And we scroll down to it. That's the way we've done it for many years now. And so be it. Right now it's 6:45. So if there are no questions, I would like to finish this class at this point. Questions? You can always, if you have any questions at any time of the day or night, Professor Ponce is 724-365. You can send me an email. You know where to get me. And I will try to respond as fast as I can. Thank you very much. I will see you Wednesday at 5:30.